Rodea the Sky Soldier is one of the most interesting Wii U games I've played because it's technically not a Wii U game, it's a Wii game. Inside the launch version of the game you'll find both a Wii and Wii U copy of the title, making it technically the last ever Wii game. The director of the game, Yuji Naka, previously of Sonic Team fame, stated upon its release, "Rodea the Sky Soldier will be released today in North America. Please play the Wii version." Opening the box greets you with the Wii version first and the Wii U version hidden behind it. The cover of the game is reversible and features the original Wii version art on the other side. The instruction booklet for the Wii U version is a folded page telling you to use the electronic booklet, whilst the Wii booklet features several pages describing the game's control in several languages. It feels like the original Wii version is just being hidden inside of a Wii U box, and as such I will follow Yuji Naka's request and play the Wii version first. It's not half bad. I wouldn't call it exceptional, but it's certainly an interesting game, and one that I may replay at times. The control system is pretty straightforward. You hold the Wiimote vertically on its own using the sensor to aim. The B button locks onto a target and flicking your wrist flings Rodea towards the point in an arc. Holding A speeds you up and damages almost any enemy you come into contact with. The levels mostly feature you flying through a string of floating structures, chaining combos of enemy kills, and collecting power-ups. The gameplay is entirely built around this core control scheme and benefits as a result. Its simplicity makes approaching new enemies and new tasks fairly straightforward, allowing for quick action and infrequent stops. Over time, the focus on using solely the Wiimote and its pointing stance gave me slight cramping, but at this point it is expected with a motion control based Wii game. The main failure of its controls is the camera. To move the camera, you have to hold the Wiimote pointer towards the edge of the screen. This is, of course, very finicky, and makes turning a slow and unreliable process. Thankfully, it's not required enough to make it a serious problem, but it still is a questionable design choice. Why not provide an option to plug in the nunchuck and use its analog stick as a camera? The power-ups in the game act as an essential addition. Strewn throughout the levels are power wings. Collecting one grants you your attack, which you have by default at the start of the level anyway. Collecting another gives you a stronger attack that often one-hits enemies. They also act as health, as each power-up gives you an extra hit before you die, much in the style of Mario games. You also collect gears, which are additional items for Rodea to use. The machine gun lets you shoot whilst flying using the aiming reticle. It's pretty satisfying to blast an enemy as you fly past them. The slide gear lets you use boost pads to run quickly, but also lets you run quickly on whatever surface you land on. Finally, the lock-on gear lets you target multiple enemies at a time to kill them in quick succession. I said these were an essential addition, but especially so for the power wings. If you take 2 hits, you can't attack and move incredibly slowly. This makes certain parts of the game incredibly annoying, where it's difficult to avoid an enemy's attack. At one point, I lost several lives in quick succession as a result of these ring enemies that I just couldn't defeat. Taking 1 hit left me escaping for the nearest power-up, only to be hit and lose it again. This is really frustrating, and if they just only removed the attack at the lowest level instead of also nerfing the speed, it would have saved me a lot of anger in certain small parts of the game. The game looks pretty great for a Wii game. It's by no means Super Mario Galaxy, as the levels are all airborne and therefore look quite sparse. But what it does makes it look very appealing. You travel so quickly past most of it that it isn't a huge deal, and as a collective whole the game benefits from its unique style. The audio on the other hand is a bit rocky. The music is nice, but the first hour or so featured levels with the same music, which got old. The audio balancing is pretty poor as the sound effects drown out the voices. This is fine by me, as the voice acting isn't that good. Ironically, the voice acting reminds me of Sonic games.
I found you and prepared you, using my gut instinct.
Your gut.
Your right arm was especially trashed.
The cutscenes also had a bizarre audio issue when it came to voices.
What is that?
The story is functional. It's there. To be honest, that isn't why you'll play this game. The game encourages perfect runs of low completion times and a high number of collectibles gained. The shorter length of the levels also encourages returning to them to complete them more quickly. This is why I said it's one I may replay in the future. It has the same appeal that the recent Sonic games do, which is perfecting a run and a satisfaction that it gives you. The game feels its best when chaining between objects and enemies, soaring through the skies, and that's what I recommend it for. It's not for everybody, but I'm personally glad that I own it. The Wii U version is interesting. The game has minimal visual improvements beyond a higher HD resolution and a bizarre visual filter. The game has longer loading times and the audio is still drowned out by the sound effects, at the times where a line isn't just missing. However, there are improvements in this version. The game features a short backstory, giving context to the world that we were thrust into in the Wii version. Namely, that the prologue took place 1,000 years before the main game, and that the magical MacGuffin that the princess gives Rodea is necessary to stop the sky world of Garuda from being invaded. The whole invasion aspect of the story was present in the Wii version, but it still isn't really worth giving much thought. The audio in the cutscenes no longer has the weird buzzing effect it did in the Wii version. The frame rate is more consistent, but at 30 FPS instead of the Wii's 60, and it's still subject to drops. Upgrades aren't pickups in this game, but instead permanent upgrades that you pay for with parts. This means the frustrating moments where you were too weak even to survive are no longer an issue. However, the game is truly an example of one step forwards, two steps back. Permanent upgrades are a welcome addition, but it also makes the early game incredibly slow. Rodea moves at a snail's pace, and even after an hour of play, the one speed upgrade I could afford only made it a bit more bearable. It pales in comparison to the Wii version's high-speed action. This is further compounded by the problems with the control scheme. Yuji Naka actually voiced his concern in regards to a 3DS and Wii U version, as he stated that the game was made for the Wiimote. He was right. Though the second analog stick can now be used for easy camera control, which proves my argument earlier, the left analog stick is used for aiming instead of the Wiimote's pointer. This means that inaccuracies are an issue, and the game has an unreliable auto-aim system in its place. And it also means that turning the camera takes ages, because for some reason you can't up the sensitivity. You can change the sensitivity of the auto-aim, but the issue lies with the control scheme, not the calibration. The game just wasn't designed for traditional control methods. In this version, Rodea is also limited by fuel, which is required to keep him moving and is replenished by touching the ground. This means that the controls, which have already been handicapped, cause true frustration as you run out of fuel and fall to your demise. Upgrades do help to improve your attack damage and speed, as well as giving you new moves, but no way to increase your fuel capacity. This makes the early game of Rodea incredibly dull, and the prospect of playing more to still be inferior to Wii Rodea is not a tempting one. So, if the game is better on the Wii, and Yuji Naka even recommended it above the Wii U and 3DS versions, then why were they produced? Well, nobody's really certain. The game was completed in 2011, but didn't see a release until late 2015. Apparently, the trouble securing a publisher for a late-gen Wii game caused delays, and the ports to the 3DS and Wii U must have also played a part in this. However, this does not justify the 4 years it took to release. The Wii U version is actually a port of the 3DS version, which explains the poor graphical fidelity, but not the massive delay, as a simple port could not have taken 4 years. Much of the blame from the game's small following has been lumped upon the publisher of the next-gen ports, Kadokawa Games. Yuji Naka did admit that they were waiting for them to complete the 3DS version, which is interesting considering his reluctance to port the game to a system with traditional controls. This also gives us an idea of why the Wii version was preserved in full within the Wii U box, as it most likely hasn't been altered since its completion in 2011. It's a shame, as only the launch version of Rodea the Sky Soldier features the Wii version, which not only makes it 2 games, but also a time capsule of sorts. Then again, the game didn't meet rave reviews or great profits, so securing a launch copy may not be a challenge. Like I said, it's really a shame. If Rodea had released as intended in 2011 for the Wii, it would have been a small game, but perhaps regarded as a cult classic to end the Wii's reign. This is one of the few games on the Wii that actually justifies the motion control method, and it's a real shame that it didn't get a chance in the spotlight. As far as we know, the game's publisher was reluctant to release it for a console on its way out, and that alone decided its fate. It may not have a place in the rooms of many, but it does have a place on my shelf as the curious Wii game with an unconvincing next-gen facade. Bloody hell, this is a mess, isn't it?